Hi. Okay. Hi everyone. So I'm doing my first vlog, and I think I have to be really fast with this one, just because I'm running out of data. And so I'm starting my documentation of all of my general stuff. And so basically, I guess hi. Hello. Welcome. So I'm just doing like a general sample. There's nothing like all crazy, but you're more than welcome to stay. Other than my personality. So I'll go ahead and I'll start with personality. And so I learned initially, what's that? So I initially learned about personality. We all have our own personalities, and I have like a spiritual reference to it, but I'm not going to mention it. But I really learned about it more so how important it is, or isn't important, how it becomes kind of secondary into recovery. And so recovery, in order to recover, you have to go through like a 12-step program. Oh, hi Daniela. I can't see it because I can't see everything, so I can't zoom in. But basically, yes, I'm at Santa Ana College at the moment. But anyways, so years ago, I first became depressed. I had noticed signs of it on my way home from one of my jobs. And one of the things is I got a phone call from my sister, and she was in prison at the time. She calls me, and so anyway, she died. She's dead. So I get I get a call from my sister or whatever, and like I'm on my way home and I'm not feeling good. And then I ended up getting in the car, or waiting for the bus, and I missed the bus. And I missed the second bus. And then I make it home, and I realize when I get off the bus, I start to cry. So I get home, and the house is really empty. And I'll tell a quick story about growing up. In my home, we have a huge home. It's not like glamorous or fabulous or whatever. It's just a regular Samoan house, with lavas, no like design or anything. But it was a big home. We had plenty of food, and we did fine, or whatever. And so, let's see. Hello. Thank you. Hi. And so I noticed signs of my first depression when I was on my way home from work. And then I ended up having an issue and stuff like that, and I had a 5150. And then I went through therapy and stuff, and then I came out of the closet. When I came out of the closet, a lot of the times depression and other symptoms of mental illness that either begin when you go through the process of disclosure, or are pre-existing prior to your disclosure, probably from trauma from when you were younger. And so I had a lot of that compiled up, and so I ended up having a second depression. And the funny thing is that a lot of symptoms of depression, a lot of doctors, they walk in, they see you, and they make a quick examination. They're like, this and that. And they're like, let me check your heart, whatever. Listen, make sure you're physiologically okay. And so when doctor walks in, I'm sitting there, I'm like, oh, so sad. Don't hate me because I'm beautiful. And he looks at me and goes, you're handsome. And I'm like, and then he walks out, and I'm like, really? And so I ended up coming back to school, and I learned a lot about myself because of school. And so I'm sorry for your loss. Oh, it's okay. And so anyways, so my sister passed away. I'll get into specifically Divas and Depression. She's actually on my schedule in the weeks. So I'll go through the levels, but first I'll go through myself. And it kind of goes through the similarity of how I begin with a prayer. And then once I begin with the prayer, I start with myself. I start with my day and how things went. And then I say, oh God, please bless everybody around me or whatever. And so, and then I go into the levels and the steps. And so I went through depression, and I was just like I couldn't smile and stuff like that. And then I got sick, and then I became homeless, and then I ended up going to Arizona. I had nowhere to go, whatever. And then I came back here once I went through that whole faith journey. And so before I had been diagnosed, um, one of the things that made me want to write the book about and have these facets of the book. So, for example, let's say like an umbrella term, let's say chocolate, or let's say sugar. So the umbrella term is sugar, but then prior to sugar is the sugar cane, and then there you got the sugar, and then what you can do with the sugar. And so in terms of like my life, it's prior to what happened, myself as an existence, and then things that I can do with that. And so Divas and Depression is one of the facets that I intend on focusing on, because it took me so long to get over my own issues. And they were things that happened in the past, things that I believed that were going to happen but would never happen, like acceptance. Sometimes acceptance doesn't happen. Sometimes you have to learn to accept yourself. Sometimes love doesn't happen. Sometimes you have to learn to love yourself. Sometimes forgiveness never comes to you. You have to learn to forgive yourself. And so there's a lot of different things and facets that I put in these avenues and these lanes, so that way when I do get to these certain places, I already have them preset in place. And so, for example, if you ever go on my Instagram, I always start off with level 1, or how it's love versus fear. And you'll see there's a woman, you can barely see it, but there's a mermaid, and she's swimming with a shark. And I actually found this Palangi woman in Hawaii who swims with the sharks. And so if you Google, blonde girl or whatever, swimming with the sharks, you can find a girl in Hawaii, or a woman, who is a big advocate for sharks, and how great white sharks are slowly diminishing and probably becoming an extinct species. And sharks and whales have been around since the beginning of time. So a lot of times these people put themselves out there in order to save a dying species that has been around since creation of the world. And so I have on my LinkedIn an example of my work. And so a lot of my work coincides with my personality. So my personality, my personality coincides with my culture. And so my culture discusses or has 3 individuals in society. So an American culture, which is a way larger culture, it's a way more productive culture, and it's a way more successful culture. But in Samoa, it's a village mentality. So the rule is in Samoa is it takes a village to raise a child. And so if you've ever raised like a 500-pound brother or like a 1,000-pound, cousin, and they end up playing for the NFL, it takes a lot of work to raise them. And so the mother needs assistance. And so myself as a Fa'afafine, you have the men who have achieved, the women who are the head of the household, and then you also have the Fa'afafines, who are usually under the umbrella term of the LGBT community here in America. And so when we come to America, you meet somebody like myself, and you're like, you're not a woman. And so I choose to be a physical male, but in honor of my culture, my personality, I do the things, or I operate in the way of a woman, or in the manner of a woman, in specific to my career work, because it's about, in America we get opportunity, and so it's about democracy in America. And so when I had become depressed, I had to go back into, I went back to school. I had to recall a lot of myself to find my own strength. And so one of the challenging things about my particular depression was that what contributed to my depression was my minority factors. So most people who are in America, now a lot of times white people or American people or Caucasian or Anglo-Saxons, they're minorities based on the statistics in what they struggle with. And so a lot of times people who assume or believe that the face of a minority is the typical ethnic individual, it's changed a lot. And so a lot of times people who don't update themselves aren't out there monitoring honestly the facts that are in the world. They overlook what's really out there. And so when I was in Arizona, there's a lot of variety in terms of who really struggles with depression. And so, I'm still studying psychology, but I'm actually wanting to write a book. I don't know if so one of the things about my personality is I don't tell anybody I'm from a famous family, or that my family's famous. I kind of like to run away from them and hide from that. And so a lot of people, once they find out, they're like, oh, your cousin's Troy Polamalu, your brother played for the NFL, your uncle coaches for the NFL, your brother-in-law plays for the NFL, a lot of celebrities or whatever. And so in our culture, anyways, so a lot of times, like with my school, they're contributing factors into my long-term goals. And so for Divas and depression, I'll kind of stay on topic. One day I came home and I had been diagnosed. The doctor looks at me and he goes, "Oh, you're handsome," or what? And he got mad. And so what he did is he categorized me under depression. And so I was at the highest form of depression, but in the lowest bars. So there is, regular sad days, and then you kind of go into the middle of like depression and like, bipolar or anxiety or whatever constitutes symptoms of depression, and then you have severely mentally depressed, and so that's usually someone who becomes a danger to themselves or a danger to others. And so I only categorized or fell into the category of being a danger to myself, and so it really was difficult for me because I struggled knowing how to take care of somebody else, but I didn't know how to take care of myself. So I'll get to that a little later, but what had happened is, what's different about my minority, hold on, we should get coffee. We should, if you're in town, are you still serving? And on the fort, I think that's what they call it, fort. Let me know where you're at, and then we'll hook up like for a holiday or something like that, because I'm in Santa Ana. Like emoji. And so anyways, so in addition to being a indigenous person who falls into a category, I'm more susceptible to depression. So that's one factor of being a minority. I'm not only is my culture, I'm also an LGBT person, which places another layer of minority or a minority factor. And then there are some other circumstances that I face in my own self that place myself as a minority. And so a lot of times people don't know. Forgive me. All right. So people don't know that if a culture or somebody is taught to respect their elders or to not talk about things because it's taboo, a lot of times people underneath in our LGBT community, we store things inside, and so what happens is you'll see in the bus bench bums or in the Bums and Roses, not Guns N' Roses, or the Storm Street, or in this season of Divas and Depression, we end up suffering a lot more things where it becomes a huger struggle for us to overcome things when we don't have 4 specific elements. And so one of them is income, one of them is community, one of them is support, and then the other one is health. And so a lot of the times in our community, we struggle with those 4 factors. I look like I'm throwing up gang signs or whatever, but a big part in recovering is having a plan, recovery plan. And so, let me grab my Bible. So, in recovery, everybody has their own higher power, and so it's like one of the things that we talk about. So when I developed my recovery plan, I didn't want people to feel like I was throwing my own Christianity in their face. And so what happens is, in order to, and this is where my like blatant honesty is like, I just want money or whatever. And so what happens is that when you create a product or a website or a book, you have to consider that your story is going to be read by all types of people, and that everybody is going to have a chance to look at it. And so when I considered that, I leaned on my own past of experiences where I had to take notice of things that were going on. And so a lot of the things that were going on were really important in terms of, how do you say, I believe could be all-encompassing because I have experience as a community outreach specialist. So one of the beautiful things is that, like right here, it says Lula's recovery prevention plan. Now my recovery prevention plan is more factually based, and so I won't advocate or endorse or enable certain things, but in the recovery book, like relapsing or using drugs, but I also know that it's unrealistic to say, hey kids, don't have sex. If you have sex, you're gonna die. You know, like in the Mean Girls movie. Like, just use condoms. It doesn't make sense to say stop doing meth or stop drinking. It's just like telling somebody to use condoms, but they're like, I don't fucking want to use condoms or whatever, excuse my language. And so a lot of the times the world around us, we just assume that the person who's going through a difficult time, that they're just going to get better and that it's just going to change. It doesn't. And so this is why it's important for us to make a plan, a fabulous plan that coincides with your personality. Once you understand the principles of the game in the world, and also the principles of the game of our anonymous communities that we have, where you can go and kind of just vent and be. But then for someone like myself who doesn't have a community, I'm kind of basically on my own. I like echo some of the like things where I was like, I'm not gonna go out like that. Like I'm not about to lay my ass down and just give up just because no other Samoan or no other Polynesian is gonna come and say, hey, get your shit together. I'm gonna do it on my own fucking self. And so that's what I did. So I'll go ahead and I'll show one of the things that, in terms of making plans, is that when I did the West Bench Confessionals, there was, I ended up revising it because there were 9 lesson plans. And so those lesson plans were similar to these and expanded upon in Storm Street. And thank you. And so you can download it on my Instagram. I just uploaded it today. And so if you go there, you can see me sitting on a bus bench. And basically there are like 9 little bookmark reminders you can print out, put on a cardstock paper, and it is basically like a to and from, hold on to it, find whatever book that works for you. If you don't like Bible, or if you believe in that and you believe in other things, you only believe in paradoxes, or you believe in the art of war or whatever, that's your higher power and that's your choice and however you go about that. No one has the right to tell you what to believe and what to do. You can fake it until you make it, and you can go about and do whatever your business, but as long as at the end of the day you become a better person than you were yesterday and the year before, that's all that really matters. And so I realized that when I went into these groups, no one really knew the real me, because I had to hide my personality. Because one, I was told my entire life that my personality was too fabulous, and so it was usually in my own family. So my own family, someone would be like, knucklehead, or stop doing that, you're embarrassing, or you're bad, or you're not a good boy, or whatever. And it's like, you don't really know. And so the beauty of having worked with the community, gang outreach, and even children, is that the game has changed. Not only has the game changed in that it empowers personality. But what it does is it places all the tools in front of them so that way they can decide based on the principles that are already placed in front of them to become a bigger, better personality. And so the rule is you'll never work a day in your life if you love what you do. If you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. So if you love yourself and you love what you do, then the work that you have to do in order to get from here to there, it won't really feel like work. And so opportunities and wherever you go, you always feel like you're in love with what you do. Now, when I was younger, I believed that, and I kind of still believe it, but I didn't know that there was so much more until I went back to school and started studying. And so, let's see if I have anything else to share. I'm actually applying for some like internships and stuff, but I ended up looking up my personality. I'm going to keep this real short so that way I can get off, and then I'll talk about next week's style and principles of the game, and I'll try to test. So one of my favorite things is that when I was in rehab, I was kind of like the only one who was like paying attention to ESPN a lot of times because that's really what the men only wanted to watch. But I fell in love with MMA, and I fell in love with all these other types of sports and stuff like that, and I have a better insight on the game, but I don't know the specifics in terms of rules. So they used to do this thing in football on ESPN. What they do is like they'd show play, and they would say, they would pause it, and then they'd be like panic or patience. And then so the commentator or the person in the ring would be like, oh, just panic. And the reason why is you go down panic. And I was like, oh no, just gotta be patient. And this is like, and so when I get to those levels, and then I'll go on to like blah 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 for Diva's impression, I should be on time, Lord willing, and where I would hope to be. But you kind of have to do a little preparing and planning for that as well. And so I'll read a little bit about my personality. So when I was in school, I'm still in school. Where is it? They do a counseling class, and they talk about 16 types of personalities. Now, one of the things they talk about is that you take the test, and when you take the test, it's not guaranteed or something like that, but it's similar to learning styles. And so when you go to school to become a teacher, you are mindful of the students that you have, because some students aren't auditory learners. Some students aren't visual learners, and some students are hands-on learners. And what they need to do is be able to be great and good or better or whatever at all three of them. And so in order to like understand how someone would comprehend something and develop and become like a better person, is to understand their learning styles, their languages, their culture, and their personality. And so mine is ISFP. It's from the Myers-Briggs test, and it's basically an artist personality. And writing my memoir about growing up, the crazy thing is, in first grade, second grade, third grade, and on up, there's always these special events that measure your ability to go about that type of personality. And so I actually remember growing up, because what happens is in multicultural psychology, they say that you forget things as you grow older. And so it's the use it and lose it mentality. But I didn't forget it, and then I asked, I was like, why do you still remember things, or why do we record things and recall those events? It's because what happens is your prefrontal cortex and your brain has these wrinkles in it, and it imprints and embeds thoughts in your mind based on this electrical synapses. So the electrical synapses comes from a part of your brain that's in the limbic system. And then in the limbic system, it controls your emotions. And when your emotions start to consume your brain and you have all these imprints, it becomes a memory. And so in that memory, it's stored in your mind's schema. And in your schema, it's based on what you see smell, taste, hear, and feel. And so when we use our senses, it's basically in a library information from our past. And so as you get older, you kind of remember really horrible things or happy things from the past, but we have to learn how to still progress and move forward. And so when I was in second grade, my teacher was like, "Hey everybody, what do you want to be when you grow up?" And I kid you not, the other students that were at school literally knew, like, I want to be a psychologist. I had no idea. And I recall myself, or I can recollect the memory of myself sitting there like, what the hell is this teacher asking me? What do we want to be when we grow up? And so I told her I wanted to be an artist. And so when she put the crayon and paper in front of us, and I had already knew all the other kids wanted to be these things I never heard of, like a doctor. I was second grade, I was a doctor, like a psychologist, a construction worker. Like they already knew what they wanted to do and become, and a lot of them are that. But then when I was younger, I was like, okay, I want to be an artist. So I sit there and I'm in second grade, and I start to draw. I'm like, oh, I want to be this or whatever. And I look at everybody else and I was like, okay, that's better than mine. That's better than mine. That's way better than mine. And so something in myself was like, you're not good enough. And so when I got to depression, I ended up realizing that my personality halted and it stayed at an artist personality. And so I had to go back in my mind and use my skills as a advocate or a practitioner for enrichment or child director or whatever. I had to use those skills to be like, what the heck happened to me when I was younger? And I was like, I still have the personality. I don't have the mindset of it, but my personality is still fabulous, like, you know, when I was younger. And so I look at those things, and so that's why a lot of the times one of the reasons why I came home, and then a lot of times I look at my younger self and I was like, God, you're like, I was a little diva. I was like, oh my God, I still am that as well, but I've grown up in a lot more. And so incidents and memories like those really store a place in your mind. If we don't learn, what happens is we end up coping. And so we end up, if we don't cope, we either cope negative or positive. And so what happens is we either go through a traumatic situation, we have T, and then it just goes like this. And so it looks like a football play. So the T equals like traumatic incident, and then the thought is, dang, that was shocking. Oh my God, that was awful. And then this is the feeling. And then now we go up or we go down. It's like, I don't know. And so a lot of the times we either store it in our lower consciousness or put it in our higher consciousness. And how we cope and go about those things determine how we feel about ourselves and determine how we feel about everybody else around us. And so one of the things that I felt uncomfortable about with was my fabulous personality. I was like, I recall, you know, even then as a child, someone saying, don't act like that. Don't be, you know, don't have a fabulous personality. And then now that I'm older, it's like, don't have that personality. I was like, who the fuck are you to tell me what to do? Fuck you, I'm the fucking queen. Like, I do whatever I fucking want to do. And so a lot of times someone tries to step to me, I was like, back off. But I digress. It's one of those things where when you really learn to love yourself, you set a boundary around yourself and say, I don't want anybody to hurt me anymore, and I won't allow anybody to hurt me anymore. And so, I'll get into like personality-wise. One of my favorite things about personality-wise is creativity, and having been homeless, I had to learn how to improvise. So one of the fabulous things. Hello, I can't see the names because the phone is. So forgive me if I'm not like personally greeting you. It says, yeah, wave. I'll just say wave. So one of the things my dad that I grieved and I went through Divas and depression with is that I never got to grieve my dad's death. I got to cope my dad's death, but I never got to grieve it. And so when I actually grieved it and I went over it and I healed, it became so much better because then now I can speak about it in a way where I'm happy, and everything that I had been through was so worth it, because it makes me look at myself today and say, the coping, the outlets, even the grief that I had to store, because of my trauma. I didn't know where to take it. I ended up knowing how to lift that and take that burden off myself and put it in something like the book, or put it in something like another book, put it in something like another book, put it in something like a product, or put it in something like a cookbook or a website, or something tangible that I can hold and say, here, this is for you. Like, if you're going through something, blah blah blah. And so one of the things when I first got here, my dad had, I'll end it right here, is my dad, when I was really young, he used to always say, Lua, money doesn't grow on trees. Money just doesn't grow on trees. And it took a lot of people to understand what that really meant, is that money doesn't grow on trees. And it's like life got really difficult and hard. It's like, fucking money doesn't grow on trees. What do you expect? And it's like, it's like, get out of your own asshole or whatever. And so I titled Money Doesn't Grow on Trees, and I had to think about my money saving products, and I was like, man, the season of September, even in August for some parts of the country, August, September, October, November, December, they're the highest rates of depression. They're the highest rates of loneliness for the homeless community. And I thought about, like, oh my God, like, I don't spend holidays with my, once upon a time family. I don't have a lover or whatever. I don't do those things. What am I gonna do? I'm just gonna set myself up for failure. So I bought a pumpkin. It's a small one. It was an affordable one with my EBT card. And so I'm still figuring out how I'm going to cook the stuff inside, because I don't want to waste anything. But I want to go ahead and like make something out of it. I might get like a couple more and stuff. And then when I didn't have work, or when I started stumbling and screwing up in life, I always had to rely on little tricks and trades to get by. And so bartending became like a thing. And I was gonna make a drink tonight, but maybe like next paycheck or whatever. And so what I wanted to do, like in terms of like decoration, because I've been noticing that no one's really celebrating, and that the town kind of has like a lot of symptoms of depression too, and usually that comes from just life struggles in terms of the economy. And so I did when I was in what is it called, history, U.S. history class. I'll show you. So if you get this book and you read about, you can go to 1700 or any art or American history, start from the 1700s and work your way up and keep track of the economy in terms of depression and money, and how the government handled it, and how the layers of the economy thrive. So you have the lower class, the homeless community, which is the untouchable, and then you have the low class, first class, and you have the middle class, which is the business, and then you have the upper class, who always gets the last say or whatever. And so if you get this book called A People's History to the United States, it's the book that helped me understand that a lot of the symptoms of depression came from just our general way of not being able to pass on information. And so one of the beautiful things was that when I came home, and having lost my brother a few years ago, my sister last year, my father, and good friends along the way, wanting to be able to pass something on to my own family and the community and the world really has been a goal of mine in my own struggle, and in my own life, and in my own faith, to be able to like move forward. So try to see if you can get this book and any other book. But I got here, there is this painting, and I just cut it up right now, and it's called Dreamers by Albert Moore, and it's about the angels and stuff. But one of the things that I wanted to do is I wanted to be Laura Croft. I don't want to like drag up. I just wanted to wear the green tank top and brown booty shorts. I don't know about the booty shorts because I'm getting kind of chubby. So Laura Croft is one of this Tomb Raider, and she's this British Tomb Raider who is a video game I used to play, and she's this lone girl. She's always by herself. She's just brown hair, beautiful British woman who goes and she raids tombs and she saves them. And so I kind of have like a pushy, edgy personality when it comes to my humor. So one of the things I wanted to do was like throw a white body over my shoulder and put blood on it with like a crown, and be like, I raided the tomb of Jesus. But I don't want to, people be like, explain to me, and then just walk away like I didn't get it. Because if you have to explain it, it's not funny. So if you see a dead body, you're welcome. I rescued it. Anyways, so what I've intended on doing is on the back of these, I was gonna make tombstones for the little garden that I have. It's so funny to me. And so I wanted to put geniuses like Albert Einstein and so forth. And so these they would be tombstones because most of them already passed on. So they'd be like Albert Einstein, Marilyn Monroe, Marilyn Voss, Abraham Maslow, and these are people who have contributed to the American culture in terms of being great geniuses who have helped people like myself and people in the world thrive and become a better person. And so if you ever you hook up or whatever, not. If you there's the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I feel like Vanna White. You always start in terms of developing. Like the example is there are processes, and then our body starts to question who we are and what we do, even after high school. And so I'll get to that later, probably in the question, but not in depth. You just gotta do it your own research. And so what I intend on doing is this pyramid was developed by Maslow. His name is Abraham Maslow, and he studied Albert Einstein. And so I have the painting from Albert Moore and the development of Albert Einstein. And so when I was younger, my quality time with my dad was to study the World War II. My father was really big about history and what I watched on TV. We weren't allowed to watch, so we'd have to sneak The Simpsons in. We'd have to sneak in Married with Children. We'd have to sneak in a lot of these kind of raunchy American TV shows. Forgive me for saying that, because they pushed humor to the point where my dad didn't want me to joke like that. But then when he came home, we changed it and stuff until we got a little bit older. And so usually my dad and mom were 5th grade. After 5th grade, you can watch that stuff. After that you can. And so drugs and alcohol. Alcohol was always a part of my life, but weed and meth and I think that's really the most I've ever done. I didn't get into any of that until I was in my 20s, late 20s. And so if I wasn't so beautiful and stuff, a lot of people are like, dang. But when you go into rehab and stuff like that and into groups, you learn that the struggle when you start something really doesn't matter. It's if you have the tools and the development to know how to overcome that. And so one year I was on one, and my sister goes, look at he's like Frankenstein. And I was like, bitch. And so I have this whole development plan that compiled Homeless to Home, Roses and Roses, Storm Street, and all of those things that Meals That Heal. And what happens is you start on the lowest level of Frankenstein, and then you work your way up to be Einstein. And so if it had not been for Einstein and the American government and some other classified information, the Americans predecessory and even after the fact would have not won the war. And so once they went into it and they were successful, and that's really important to remember, because you'll see that how successful they have always been, is that anybody, almost everybody, can become an Albert Einstein in their own personal way. And so the beautiful thing is that when I was younger, when I looked at all these developments and I realized that I no longer had it as an adult, I was like, dang, I already been through that, so it shouldn't be a problem. And so when I look around me, almost all of us have kind of always been in and a part of this. And if we haven't, what we do is in the community, we look around to see if there are any resources or opportunities for those who are short ticketed or short, changed, to have these opportunities to develop and believe in themselves, to be able to become that person. And so I'll end there. My personality is artist. It's ISFP. I used to say IFSP, and basically it's 2 and 2. So you're introverted and you're extroverted. And so introverted means how you take things, how your personality takes things on the inside, and then extroverted is how you take things on the outside. And so I don't know how to describe it best, but it's better to take classes at school. And I really think it's a really good opportunity for anybody and always for everybody to either read books and go to school. I kind of saw a flyer that said that you can get paid. So basically, you go to school for free, and then you also can get paid for units. But you just gotta go find out the flyers and stuff. So my personality is ISFP, and basically it just means I'm intuitive, either extroverted or introverted. I use sensory perception, like how I see and hear and smell and taste things, and I feel things, and then I perceive things in a certain way. And so basically that's my artist personality there. And so the beautiful thing is that I heard this singer say something, and she's one of my favorite singers. Her name is Toni Braxton. So Toni Braxton is similar to myself in the sense that she comes from a family of talented individuals, but they're way more talented than myself. But she's been so humble and helpful in terms of getting over my own depression, because I listen to a lot of her music to help me feel stronger, because in my culture, women are the breath of a Fafafine. They are the help. We are the help of the Fafafine is the help of the woman, and so we help her. And so to see her catalog of work and her consistency in her artistry, it has always been a beautiful thing. And one of the things she said when she was in an interview, she says a lot of funny things that I don't think people get, like for a woman to be hilarious. As she said, all my sisters can sing, but I'm not the best singer in my family. And so if you ever listen to like Toni Braxton, has a lower tone of voice, but she's really good. And I love her, and so I always listen to her music for the rest of my life. But if you listen to her other sisters, and one of her sisters passed away last year, she gives credit to her sisters. And so in the hood you say, hey, you give credit where credit is due. And so one of the things about myself is that personality-wise, talent-wise, and dream-wise, I've never been like the Troy Polamalu or the Nikki Sewell, but I've always been my own self. And so now that I'm on my own, the beauty is that I can express my own personality, knowing that I've been through recovery, I know my own history, and I have my own plan for the future. And duck! Set it up. And I hold on to whatever comes to me. And so I would pray used to at night, when I go to sleep, I would say yes, 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 yes. And the reason why I say that personally is that I would wake up the next day and every day would be like chaotic. But because I prayed the night before and I said whatever it is, and so you usually say, Lord, your will, not my will be done. And so a lot of times it's hard for us to let go of our own way and our own will. But at night I ended up training myself in Arizona to say yes, 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 and whatever. And so I got used to knowing that it's not my will. And so there's a song in the Celebrate Recovery world that says that in his time, he makes all things beautiful in his time. And so I remember recollect walking into the church, and I had my fabulous outfit from the Salvation Army that we had to like work in the back and stuff. And I walk in feeling all cute, but inside I was like, I hope that the man there has the answers. And as soon as I walked in, the women were singing, in his time, he makes all things beautiful in his time. And so I was like, that's all I needed to know. That's all I needed to know. And so I hope that whatever your personality is, that whoever your higher power is, up, down, all around, that in your time and whoever's time, you become who you are, and that you end up living and becoming the dreams that you want to become. So I'll leave it at that. I will tune in probably next week. We'll talk about style and how my dad would say, you know, don't buy clothes, and so I'd have to wear hand-me-downs, and so I got used to wearing the same clothes. I don't think anybody even notices around here that I wore literally, but if you look, I wear the same denim jacket and the same hat. I have the same shoes, and I just change out underwear and socks, and that's it. And so I'll end it at that. And I love you guys. Thank you for tuning in for the first Divas and Impressions.